I know as a homeopathic practitioner, what brings a lot of people to me with depression is the side effects of the antidepressants they're taking. So can you just speak on that for a little bit? Just what are side effects and what are some of the side effects commonly experienced by people taking antidepressant medication?
Yeah, and it's not only side effects, it's also the recurrence rate, okay? So people have been on drugs for 3-4 years, and then, you know, which of course is not always followed, half of them fall back into the depression. And as a result, doctors might prescribe higher dosages, which never work, by the way, and that's also seen in the studies. Or they change drugs, right? There is a new drug, and then they do a combination, and so on and so on. Again, too, if it works or not, well, you know, when they did this combination, as when they say, trying to match the symptoms to the patient with the drug, well, they never did a placebo at the same time. So you have no idea if it therefore was a placebo effect or not, and most likely it was, because already what we saw before. So then the next thing comes, which is really sad in a certain sense, if you then think that people have been taking drugs that cost too much money, the side effects that we will talk about it, but then on the top of it that they have to stop, and they can't really stop right away, or they get even severe withdrawal symptoms, then we have to start asking ourselves, what have we achieved for the patient that we could have achieved with other primary interventions, even psychotherapy, you know, even and homeopathic intervention, more natural interventions, then what have we achieved with these particular drugs? No, nothing really, if we think about it. Side effects, obviously, many of these drugs, if we think about it, what the effect is, basically, as usual, Western medicine tries to suppress symptoms. You know, we're not talking always about cure. Rarely do we talk about cure anymore. We talk about controlling a disease, which means really suppressing symptoms. And as long as we suppress symptoms, people obviously feel better, so to speak, but they are not gone. It's, you know, suppressing a disease, but it's coming back. And that's why the recurrence rate, as I talked about, for depression or any other particular disease is always high. Of course, there is not one drug, Western medical drug, that doesn't have a ton of side effects. And, you know, this can go from nausea, dizziness, tinnitus, you know, loss of eyesight, insomnia. I mean, some urinary problems. Some are really very strong. I just invite you to listen to the to the ad, the TV ad that they have. Always we have the beautiful picture, and how quickly at the end of the TV ad, one has a litany of side effects mentioned very rapidly. You know, probably nobody pays attention to it, but it is there. You know, they are obviously obliged to say such things, and we only have to look in our PDRs, you know, basically where all the drug descriptions are done. We see what it does is a small paragraph, and we have 2 more pages of all the side effects for every drug. You know, so it's big, and again, like I said, if we would get much benefit from it and there's nothing else, then it might be worth it. But if it actually is just a placebo and there's no benefit, and then the only thing we really give the patient is another test of his endurance and basically add depressive symptoms, I mean side effects to it, then it's really, you know, no brainer, right? I mean, really, we shouldn't give these drugs. As, like I said, Professor Kish said, these drugs don't work. This was his conclusion. Of course, it didn't create him any friends, for sure.
And of course, by suppressing a disease, the disease in the long run can actually be made worse, can't it?
Yes, of course, right. Suppressing, what we mean with that, we push the symptoms down, you know, we push it in our unconscious, we can function. But what it also happens is that the real emotions that one should deal with never get addressed. You know, it's normal that all of us, being human beings, will get in periods where we have grief, when something happens to us that really creates us grief, and hopefully not depression, because that's the start, it's one of the triggers. But it's also very good to really go through, to work through the grief, to feel the grief really, and really try to get something going, like even be it exercise, be it talking to somebody, be it talking to family, go to your therapist for my part, go to your homeopath. You know, try to do something naturally what works for you, and before you even resort to something like this, which now basically has been found to be really nothing but a placebo. You know, so that is the sad thing. And indeed, what you do also is when we suppress the symptoms, like in depression, you know, it's like taking the emotional freedom, whatever is left of that patient, you take it completely away. Okay, the patient doesn't feel anything anymore. And I had patients saying to me, you know, I was sitting in a movie theater and everybody was crying, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't cry. I couldn't feel anything. This is not really what we call curing. Or really processing a particularly depressive state. Okay, this is really suppressing and making a zombie out of me with no feelings. This is not a human being. You know, it's not even an animal. No, animals have feelings too. So you can clearly see, and of course we need to continue this, because if you ask the question to the doctor, then how long do I take this? As long as it works, right? No matter, or of course the reality is, as long as you don't get too many side effects, because then we need to do something else with another drug that basically has different side effects, and now we know really is also placebo effect.
Okay, so homeopathic medicine. So what are homeopathic medicines and how are they developed?
So the first one, as I mentioned before, was China, the bark of a Peruvian bark of a tree. And in effect, we really still derive quinine for the treatment of malaria from it. So it can be really almost anything in nature, going from minerals, going through animal products, even poisons. We often say poisons are the best medicine. Plants, of course. In other words, it's unfortunately with the destruction of the earth, we have really only probably tested about 5% of what we could. And certain species, be it animals, plants, are disappearing rapidly, which were a great source and are a great source of really healing remedies that we could have. And even in spite of that, we have really proved quite a bit of remedies, in the thousands. And we still prove new remedies at this point. And the nice thing is about, again, too, and this is of course one of the mysteries of homeopathy, one of the points that Western medicine or scientists might attack homeopathy on, because it hardly has, certain potencies have hardly any particular molecule in it. In other words, they call it a placebo, therefore. This, was all right. The interesting thing is, what they fail to understand is that Western medicine really is based on Newtonian physics, which is from the 1580s, so now they never changed. It's basically really based on the old physics. Yet Professor Planck, Einstein, who doesn't know them, in 1900 really had the quantum physics. And then when you really read the quantum physics, really how the process works, it was a better understanding than the linear approach of Newtonian physics, the interpersonal relationships. And for us, and for me now, having studied traditional Chinese medicine and homeopathy, it is quite amazing to see how this quantum physics was already discovered by the Chinese 5,000 years ago. In other words, the Chinese medicine, and of course homeopathy itself too, really work according to quantum physics, not Newtonian physics. Amazingly is that in our society, we have adapted and really accepted the quantum physics in many ways, in biology, in physics. We use it in our computers, we use it in a daily life, the quantum physics. The most amazing thing, really incomprehensible to me, is that Western medicine is not operating according to the newest findings, what they really found with quantum physics, and really sticks to the old linear Newtonian physics, with as a result, obviously, that they can say something like, well, homeopathy is just a placebo. And obviously, it's actually just the opposite. It's the more modern Western, more modern medical modality, really, because it is based, already before quantum physics was discovered, they already operated on it.